Welcome to Rapture Thursday. We are about to be taken away to a better place, so we have to be fast with what is new for today. As part of the news in the PTR, we have already gone through what was the news that would come in 11.2 regarding Mythic Plus, which is the new anti-lever system that will be added in 11.2. However, now we have some more data mined messages, data mined prompts for this system, and there is especially one particular thing which might end up being quite worrying for the player base. So since we don't have yet Mythic Plus actually working in the PTR, this is what we can go by in terms of how it will work. So first, as you join a key, imagine you go into the looking for group tool, you get invited into a key, you enter the Mythic Plus instance. As soon as you enter the instance, you will get the message you have joined a Mythic Plus instance. Leaving the instance before the timer ends without voting to abandon the dungeon will give you a penalty. Same thing you will get if you exit the Mythic Plus key after the timer has started. You will be told you are not in your party's active Mythic Plus instance. You will receive a penalty in 2 minutes, basically like the duration of like your summon that you can take. It can happen sometimes, right, that you have to move out of the active instance because you have to like change talents, you were in the wrong talents or something. You will get this warning once you go out, before you get time to come back in. Then you will get, of course, the warning when you're trying to leave the group. You will get asked to leave the group, and then you will be told repeatedly leaving Mythic Plus instances will cause you to be flagged as a Keystone deserter, as well as if you don't return to the instance within the remaining time, you will be kicked from the instance group and receive a penalty for leaving. This is because, of course, in 11.2, with this system, you will have to legally exit an ongoing Mythic Plus key only with the new addition of the /abandon vote. This is very similar to the vote to kick system that already exists in game. You need to have a certain amount of players be okay with the vote to kick in order to be successful. This would be more or less the same. You can go /abandon to start the abandon vote to be able to legally leave the dungeon. You will be told that you need X amount of votes to be able to abandon the instance. We still don't know how many to win the vote. If it's 3-2, 3 yes and 3 no, if it's 4-1, or if you need a complete 5-0 win for the ones who want to leave. Now, the new extra that we did not know before is that if you're trying to have this abandon vote, 4 players will get the same message. You have this amount of votes needed to abandon the instance. The 5th one, namely the key holder, will get a different one. Will get votes needed to abandon the instance. As the key holder, your vote counts for more. So presumably your vote would count as 2, likely. This would put things pretty awkward because now you no longer have 5, meaning you're odd numbered, so there is always going to be a winner, 3-2 or 2-3. If the key holder votes for 2, now it's as if having 6 people, so you can have 3-3 splits. So in that case, it will be a complete draw. However, we don't know, as I said, how many yes votes are needed for this vote to be successful. I would think you would need more than 1 player. For the simple logic that if a single player voting no is enough to stop you from leaving the dungeon, then this makes it even more likely that the key holder will be less likely to deplete his key and let players leave his key, and will constantly say no and lock everyone in there with him. So I think at least a couple of players out of 5 would have to say no to leaving the dungeon. Now, the extra one is that, first of all, of course, once you leave the dungeon, there was the question, okay, but what if one of these guys has left without winning the vote wasn't successful, so technically we can't leave, but the guy got triggered, you wiped on the first pool of the first room of Cinderbrew, the guy said, no, I'm out, started the abandon vote wasn't successful, he left. Now everyone can leave. You will get the message that another player has left the instance and you can now leave without a penalty. So technically you only need the first guy to bite the bullet and take the penalty for everyone else to be allowed to leave freely. The other thing about this abandon vote is that similar to the vote to kick, you pretty much have a timer. After you abandon vote once and it's not successful, you will have to wait again, presumably a couple of minutes before trying to abandon vote another time. Now, this is where things get problematic, is when it comes to the actual punishments, right? Punishment, which was being flagged as a deserter. Okay, so the problem is that once you leave, you will get the consequences of your leaving without winning the abandon vote is that a deserter's badge will be visible in your Mythic Plus group finder. You will get your character flagged by the message saying that you have been flagged as a Keystone deserter by repeatedly leaving Mythic Plus instances. Now, what is the relevant part of this? The relevant part of this is, of course, that it is a punishment for the player, because now you enter, like you did before this dungeon, you entered your looking for group, you tried to find a dungeon and you got invited, and then you left. Now you are a deserter. So you go back to the looking for group tool, you go back trying to sign up to dungeons, and then the key holder who is inviting players will see your deserter badge next to your name. So he now knows if he invites you, he's inviting someone who has left often. So it was already a punishment for the player, because now, realistically speaking, how many players will invite a deserter, right? That player will likely have to do one of two things. Either go into lower level keys where players are willing to invite him because he has more score or more item level, so they are willing to to bite the bullet of the guy being a deserter if he's better geared or more powerful than the level of the key he's trying to get into. Or two, basically this is a soft version of a low priority queue that exists in other games, where similar players have to collaborate with themselves because they're not being put together with the rest of the player base. So in this case, it would have to be other players with a deserter badge inviting other players with a deserter badge, because they're the only ones who would invite each other. So you have to play with them enough times, possibly and hopefully without leaving the dungeon without the abandon vote, enough times for you to lose the deserter badge. Now, this was the assumption before. However, what makes this now basically a certainty is the extra message over here, which is the Mythic Plus Deserter group warning. This group has one or more players that have been flagged as a Keystone deserter. So what will happen now isn't just that me, leader of my key, will see in the looking for group tool players who are a dungeon deserter, so I can just ignore them. What will happen now is that if a different group leader and key holder invites a dungeon deserter, what happens now is that for everyone else who is looking for the groups, they will all be able to see that that group has a dungeon deserter in it. So, for example, obviously, if you're a dungeon deserter yourself, running your own key, you would still give out the message to the others that you are a dungeon deserter. So if they want to join that group, you are one. But also, if you're a tank, and there is a group with a healer and a DPS, and they invite you, deserter tank, now when you have to find the last two DPS, every other DPS queuing up for this key will see that the key has a deserter in it. So that's what makes this even less likely for players who get this dungeon deserter badge on their character to get invited into groups. Now, obviously, there are a few ways around this. For example, tanks and also healers. Those are obviously at a higher likelihood of being invited because they are much more scarce than the DPS. So, you know the feeling, you have 3 DPS in the same group trying to wait for the tank and the healer for a dungeon. For the record, tip of the day, if you're trying to start a group, don't start by inviting 3 DPS. If you're a DPS yourself, wait to invite the tank or the healer at least first. Because it's more likely, first of all, for better DPS to queue up on groups that already have a tank and a healer because they are already easier to fill up and be ready to go, and two, for tanks and healers to sign up with another DPS or as a duo, so it's easier to get them in bulk. rather than being locked at a group with just 3 DPS already. However, if you're a 3 DPS group and you're there waiting for a tank and finally one shows up in your applications of the group and it's a deserter, you're like, okay, I'm tired of waiting, let's get the deserter. So it's easier for the tanks and even the healers to get by the system. It's much harder for the DPS. We already know players complaining every day, they can't even get into a +10 because they think they are being discriminated against. Little do they know they're not being invited because there are other 70 DPS players in the same sign-up scrolling window of options. So now, if on top of that you add being a deserter as a DPS, it's over, right? It's over. So with this one, on top of this, now with you even flagging the groups you are in of being deserters, it's even less likely. I guess it's doable if you're the last one. If you're a group of 4 that are not deserters, then you can just invite the last one with a deserter badge for the group to be complete. However, this is essentially as we said, a pseudo low prio system, where if you do end up leaving too many Mythic Plus dungeons, you will have to enter this low prio queue system where very likely you will have to find a full group of deserters only. Maybe the couple of desperate DPS that are non-deserters who are trying to get invited into a group and couldn't, so they end up doing fine. Let's join this scuffed group, at this point I don't care anymore kind of deal. But now with this added addition that not only you get flagged as a deserter, but also every group you are in will subsequently be flagged as a deserter one, or having a deserter in it will make it even harder for players to join those groups, and also in particular the tank and the healer, which since are the more scarce roles. We have to see the developments of this system and hopefully it won't be abused too much. Of course, there are still many questions about this. What happens? The biggest one likely is what happens if you get the abandon vote. The abandon vote is no, but the player who wanted to abandon the key is already triggered. He knows the key is over, or he thinks the group is awful and won't time the key. However, he doesn't really want to get this deserter badge on him. He got it once already, it was miserable, he had to run some +8 keys for like 6 dungeons to get that deserter badge out of him, and now he doesn't want it again, so what he's gonna do is he's going to AFK. Okay, fine. You don't want to leave, you don't want to let me leave this group, even though you just wiped because you missed your interrupt. Now I'm locked in with you, depleting this key, just because you don't want to end the key too early because it's your key. I don't care. I'm gonna alt-tab and watch some videos. I'm gonna load up a different game, go AFK in the key, I don't care, until you just leave yourself because I'm no longer playing. That would also be a problem in and of itself. It would basically boost the rates, boost the chances of players just going AFK. Instead of actually leaving the group, they will just find different ways to do so. So we will see how that will get handled in the future, but these were the extras we have seen from the data mine systems of this new deserter, of this new lever, Mythic Plus lever system that will come live in 11.2. But for today though, on this Thursday, right before the release of the raid testing that will come up today and tomorrow in the PTR, it is now time to leave each other. We're starting as usual the goodbyes by thanking everyone for having watched the video, together with of course everyone else who has been supporting completely for free by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these things out of the way, thank you again for watching, see you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, nice 7 days in a row of predicted 35 to 37 degree heat.